how much responsibility do they have to take for developing a car so singularly around one driver's preference that no one can successfully pilot the second seat? What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Formula One True North, the Canadian Formula One podcast. Back here with the boys, Drew, Thomas, and I'm Walker, and we are talking China. Second Grand Prix of the season. Lots happening. First sprint race. What do you got, Drew? Opening statement. What did you take away from this week?
First of all, I want to talk about the track. I didn't know that it was like an actual Chinese symbol for Shanghai. Like the shape is like, yeah, it's like shaped like a Chinese symbol, which I thought was super cool. And like to be able to take a Chinese symbol and make it into a track and make it exciting and fun, and I'm absolutely here for it. So that was a cool little fun fact that I think Crofty told her. I don't know, one of the dudes on TV was commenting about, and I guess somebody fact checked them, and in fact it's Chinese symbol. I think it's for Shang. I don't know if Shanghai is like, I think it means Highland or something like that. Anyways, cool as shit. What did I think about the weekend? I liked it. Didn't love it. There was some times, my wife was watching it with me. She always watches the race with me, and she was like, "Is it boring for you?" And I couldn't say no. Like between lap 24 and 52, I was like, yeah, it wasn't the greatest. But lots of cool things happening, right? Like you had the sprint race, which I thought was awesome for many reasons. And then you had the actual race. We talked about this whole sprint race weekend format, and we talked whether we liked it, hated it, loved it, didn't like it, what was wrong with the old format, why do we need... Listen, we had two completely different races in the same weekend. The outcomes were completely different because there was no need for any sort of tire changes, which changed all of the strategies, which made some cars better than the other. I think some cars without lots of free practice tested better, didn't test better. I just think the dynamic of the weekend as its entirety is a lot better. And Liberty Entertainment has done its job and made Formula One exciting again. And yeah, I don't know, man. It was a great weekend. There was lots of positives that come out of it, lots of negatives that came out of it. A lot of teams, Ferrari, that just had some difficulties all the way through the weekend. And I think it's showing where the cream is rising to the top in terms of the rookies. And I think that the rookies are really separating themselves, and the ones that are performing and really giving their teams everything are really separating themselves. And it was an exciting weekend, man. I'm here for it.
So I don't even know where to begin with this weekend. As Derek in the Discord, by the way, shout out to the Discord, as he said it, as Drew said it, at some points they thought the race was a little bit boring. Surprisingly, I didn't. I don't know what did it for me, but if it was the commentary or it kept me engaged the whole race. And I know for me personally, before, China wasn't really the most exciting track, but this time I was able to watch it and actually be focused on it and see what's going on. Lots of things happened. Regards to the rookies, I have many mixed feelings in regards to that. What happened with, after the finish, I felt like I was watching a live episode of Drive to Survive. There was so much drama even a couple days after. And, to your point, Drew, when you said, Liberty Media did something right, this felt like an episode of Drive to Survive with Liberty Media mixed in, because what happened during the race and after the race and a couple days even after that, it was entertaining. Not sure if it's the good type of entertaining, as we're going to discuss later with the mixed messages, what was played, what was not played on live TV. So I was a little bit disappointed in that per se, because again, they were kind of, in my opinion, they were kind of following a little bit that's why I mentioned Drive to Survive, kind of like a false narrative, whether that's on purpose or not, which they said it's not, but who knows them. But overall, surprising result, interesting race, and yeah, there's going to be more to talk about when we're going to get to the rookies, because I have a few things to say about that.
Who knew that Thomas loved a good management race? Just people looking after their tires. I think we've been doing this podcast for over 2 years now, and I finally figured out what rocks your socks when it comes to a good Formula One race. Just tire management.
You know what? No, it wasn't that, but it kept me engaged, and I don't like part of it. I think it was the commentary with the commentators. Just it was interesting. It was fun. Maybe it was a little bit more of a tougher track with the rookies, and it kept me engaged. Essentially, it was surprising.
Okay, here's a question for you. Which feed do you guys listen to or watch? Are you watching the Sky Sports or the F1 TV?
Sky Sports.
I watch F1 TV, but I do the international Sky Sports. Like, I press the second button down on the thing as much as I can. There are some times where it doesn't allow me to hit it, and then I have to just listen to, was it Julian Palmer and whatever the other guy's name is, Brundle Jr., and like, it's all good, man. Like, you know what? 6 to 1, half a dozen the other. But there's something about Martin Brundle and David Croft that it's just raw. It's just what F1 is to me. You know what I mean? Like, you hear that voice and it's comforting. Like, like it's lights out and away we go. What are we discussing? Like I haven't. The Chinese Grand Prix is underway. Like, buddy, get out of here. Buddy,
I haven't listened to the Sky Sports one in a while. I don't know. I've been listening mostly to the F1 TV commentary, so maybe we'll give that one a shot again. I just hated those like in between moments, especially like during qualifying, like where there would just be 10 minutes of silence in between sessions. It would just always bother me. So I just got in a habit of going straight to the F1 TV. Anyways, off topic. I'll tell you what I liked about this weekend. I like the parity that we're seeing this season so far. You know, you talked about having 2 races, 2 very different results, different teams succeeding in different conditions. But if you look down the race results, right, and you see obviously McLaren up there, Mercedes, Red Bull, great. That's wonderful. You got Haas up in the top 10. You got Williams in the top 10. You have fucking Lance Stroll, 9th place in the Chinese Grand Prix, right? So there's so many teams that are vying for lots of points, and you look at the results that Williams has had overall. What is it? Albon equaled his points total from last year in the first 2 races. You got Haas with a interesting looking car this year. So I'm loving the parity that we are seeing so far this season. And you saw that both in the sprint qualifying, sprint race, main GP qualifying, and the race as well. So it's lots to look forward to. And I think it's going to be really interesting. And I think those top, I think that 5th, that midfield, we talked a lot about the midfield, but you look at, even teams 5, 6, maybe even 4, 5, 6, I think there's a lot of opportunity for some of these midfield teams to make a little bit of noise based on what we're seeing so far. So hopefully they can continue that pace and continue that development throughout the year, and it's not just the first couple of races. Speaking of 2 different races, let's talk about Ferrari, because they had 2 very different races.
Yeah, they did.
It was like you got the sprint, and it was like hallelujah. It's like the light was shining down, and you had fucking Lewis Hamilton winning a sprint race, getting pole position. Everything is beautiful, and then the race happens.
Yeah, you know what? Let's start with the sprint race, because Ferrari showed up in a big way. And you know what? Like, the wife and I were watching it, and Lewis was in his peak form. Like, he seemed one with the car, and like Max kept like closing in on him, and he just like, he didn't let anything happen. Like, he didn't overthink things. That whole tire whisper came back into it. Like, he knew he was going to be on mediums for the entire 19 laps, and he was just methodical about it. And it was something like Lewis in Mercedes' heyday, when like all he had to do was manage his tires, and Bono would just like coach him through it. Hey buddy, just like these 3 corners, just take it easy on this. And we know Lewis is getting absolutely no help from the race engineers at Ferrari. So You know, he just internalized where he was at that moment, and he just got in the zone. Like he went tunnel vision, like old school Lewis Hamilton, and just ran away with it. And it was so good to see his dad in the paddock. And like I can understand, you know, as a proud dad moment that he was just watching him win, you know, his first sprint race. Not only Lewis Hamilton's first sprint race win, but his first sprint race win as a Ferrari driver in the second race. And Ferrari needs to take any W's that they can. And, you know, I think Lewis just proved to Ferrari and all of the naysayers that, you know, picking him up and paying an absolute fortune for him to be there was all worth it, because there was a lot of people. And, you know, and Walker, if you were watching the international feed, you would hear Martin Brundle and David Croft talk about the amount of people that they hear around the paddock saying, like, you know, Lewis Hamilton's washed up. They shouldn't have picked him up for Ferrari. Like, that was a bad call, kicking out Carlos Sainz. And he shut down all those naysayers. And I think that it was a very impressive win to see him gel with that car so quickly. But then the race happened. And I think that, I don't know if Ferrari changed anything, but that car did not look the same. Like, it did not look as dominating and menacing as it did in the sprint race. And I don't know what happened.
I think they changed quite a bit, actually.
From the sprint race to the
sprint race. Like, if you were watching the F1 TV feed. Pardon? No, because what was happening was, I mean, so they're not in Parc Ferme, right? Because now they have the chance to set the car up again for the GP qualifying and the GP race, right? That was one of the changes they made last year. So as I understand, especially on the Hamilton side, he made quite a few small adjustments, I think, to allow for better tire wear over longer distances. And it just completely changed the characteristics of the car. It was apparently a setup that Charles had tested in Bahrain, but Lewis did not have the chance. So he kind of went with that setup, and it just wasn't something that agreed with his driving style. Thomas, what was your take on the weekend for Ferrari?
Yeah, so two different results completely. You know, as Drew said, sprint was, you know, phenomenal, amazing, you know, entertaining, first win. And then during the race, you know, Charles and Lewis, they were doing okay, but you could see them. They were, you know, giving it all they had for those, you know, points in those places. Like, they were, I don't want to say they were struggling, but they were fighting the car to some point. I honestly thought, you know, they're going to finish in the podium, and I thought they overall, their driving phenomenal for what they did. I think they drove the hell out of those cars. You know, it's a shame what happened, but you know, it is what it is. You know, we're only on the second race. There's plenty more to go. I'm sure, you know, they're gonna get the taste of their first podium fairly soon. So it was interesting. I thought they did okay overall. But yeah, whatever Ferrari did, you know, typical, something was amiss.
So both cars were disqualified at the end for really minor technical infringements, but I guess that's just Formula One, right? Everything's based on fractions of pounds and millimeters. What was it? Charles was underweight, and Lewis, by 1 kilo, and Lewis had like half a centimeter, or was it half a millimeter?
Half a millimeter
off the skid plate, half a millimeter off the skid plate, and they're both disqualified. So bad day gets worse. So my question for you guys is, which is the real Ferrari? Will the real Ferrari please stand up? Is it sprint race Ferrari? Is it GP Ferrari? Or is it somewhere in between? Don't pick in between, because that's boring.
No, I think the first Ferrari that we saw was the Ferrari. Like, after watching the Grand Prix, like, Charles got nicked by Lewis or vice versa, whatever. Like, you know, he hit in the side of Lewis, and it knocked off his end plate from his front wing, and he drove around the rest of the race with it.
Faster. Like, it probably actually was an advantage.
That's my point. How is that an advantage? Right. And like, I saw that whole little diagram. Someone explained it on Instagram. Thank God for the internet. And it said, because like it gives it more structure, and that thus means it can't bend as much, and now it was giving him faster speeds in the straight. I think there's a lot of learning that could happen there for Ferrari. But back to your main question here, Walker, which was, where do I think the real Ferrari is? I think the real Ferrari is fighting for podiums. I don't think this mid-pack shit is the reality for these guys. Like, I think these guys are fully on the podium shot every single time. Like, these guys will be fighting McLaren and Max, and well, look at George too for race wins. And to your point earlier, Walker, like, just watching qualifiers this week, and you had to get down to 19th place before 1 second was the gap from the first place person to the 18th place person was 1 second. That's incredible, because I've seen the gap from first to second place to be 1 second. And to have all the teams kind of bunch up like this, I really think that, driver skill is just getting better and better. And I think that the simulators that these guys are in are just getting these guys so dialed in with their cars that how can 1 second, cover a spread of 18 drivers over the course of just like plus minus 3 miles? It's incredible. But back to the point, do I think Ferrari has better in it than a double DNF or disqualification? 100%. Do I think that they are going to be winning every race? No, I think that McLaren car is way tighter and they are just way more gelled as a team. And I just think that that Ferrari has a little bit of work to do, but I think they're a podium fighting team every race.
So I have two answers for that. The short one is, I think the real Ferrari is what we've seen in the sprint, competing for wins and, podiums. My second answer is, somewhere in between, just because
you son of a bitch. I told you not to do it.
We all know they can be great. The drivers can be great. The commands can be great, and they're going to get on the podium. But sometimes, as we all know, again, everything might be going well, and then the team decides to do a stupid call, either to pit for tires or overtake or don't overtake, and they end up shooting themselves in the foot and screwing themselves over. Hopefully that's not going to be the case this season. Here's to hoping. So hoping they're going to continue fighting for podiums for the first, 3, 4, 5 places, but not during. I don't think they're going to be a mid-pack team or near the end. Do I think they're going to beat Red Bull and McLaren? Sure, there's going to be some races. Do I think they're going to be on par with McLaren? No, to Drew's point, no. McLaren is just way too advanced, and I could even see Max, putting up a fairly good fight to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sprint Ferrari is closer to, the true pace of that car and what it can do, and I think that's going to be more consistent. But again, going back to the parity that we're seeing in the field, even in like the top, let's call it the top 5 or 6 positions, I think this is going to be a real. I don't think we're going to have the same thing that we had that we've been used to the last 4 years, where you have one driver, i.e. Max, run away with the championship, where it's basically all said and done by whatever race, 6 or 7, right? I think we're going to have multiple race winners throughout the season, right? And you look at Lando, you look at Oscar, you look at George. George has been performing really well. Obviously, Max up there, but you have 6 drivers that can win on any given weekend. And I think, given the parity that we're going to see, do I think they are a sprint race kind of pace car? Yes, but I still don't know that necessarily is going to guarantee them wins, let alone podiums on a week-to-week basis, right? Just because of how close those top teams are right now. I don't know. Time will tell. We'll look ahead. We'll see what happens in Japan, Suzuka, in a couple of weeks, because that is always one of my favorite tracks. That's going to be a ton of fun. You know who's probably not looking forward to Suzuka? Maybe he is, maybe he's not. I don't know. Is Liam Lawson. Because is he going to be there? I don't even know. Is he going to have a ride? Who knows? Fucking internet is all over the place with this, but he has had a terrible, terrible start. And you know what I was watching? I've been kind of like slowly going through the last season of Drive to Survive, and I just watched the episode where he's kind of competing with like Daniel and Yuki, and he gets the seat, and he comes off. I know as a driver, you have to be arrogant. You have to think you're the best. Like there's an ego part of it that you just have to succeed at that level. But he comes off so arrogant in that episode, and it is not a good look on him right now. That has not aged very well, given how the first two races have gone. So, what's his fate? Where is Liam in 2 weeks from now?
It's not about Liam Lawson's arrogance. It's just yes, to your point, Walker, you have to have some version of confidence. You know what I mean? You have to think you're the best. Like, every driver on that grid thinks that if they had the best car, that they would be winning every single race. They all do. And they have to have that. And I get that. I totally understand that. Like, you need that mentality to be in any sort of high level on anything that you do. I just think that, like, it's not one race. Like, you're watching them in Australia. Those were really bad circumstances. Obviously, the rain comes into play. Like, it's not an ideal situation. But, like, qualies were, and, like, that didn't look so good. And then we are in China, and, like, we had sprint quali, sprint race, quali, and race. Not those. I don't look at each race as a chance. I'm looking at each time he gets in that car as an opportunity, and he has absolutely fumbled every single one of them. That's where I'm more nervous. It's not like he absolutely blisters it in qualies and then just, like, fumbles it on the race. You know what I mean? Where you can see his true pace. But, like, when he is struggling to get out of Q1 and doesn't, he's out in Q1. That's not a look. Like, Bortoleto is, like, Hulkenberg, like, those guys are trying to get out of Q1 in fucking tractors. And this guy's in a Red Bull. Like, Max is putting it on, at least top 3, if not in, like, number 1 spot. Like, he goes out there, he puts in a banker lap. That banker lap's good for, like, 3rd, 4th place, even after the guys are taking the late quality laps with more rubber down on the track, right? And so I just think Lawson has misplaced that confidence, and I can only imagine, knowing how arrogant he was last year, like, driving by, giving Yuki the finger, Perez the finger, like, and then having this happen must destroy his soul. Like, he might walk around that paddock just like, just absolutely crushed. So I actually don't mind Liam Lawson as a driver. I just think he hasn't shown up in any sort of capacity, and I think Red Bull has stopped supporting bad drivers as of Checo, because Checo brought the dozo and Liam does not. So I think that his leash is a lot shorter, and we talked about that last year. We talked about that earlier on in the season for the pods, and I just think that, like, they're going to rip off this Band-Aid a lot faster because Yuki is smashing it out there. Isaac Hadjar is smashing it out there. Just my
question to you, Drew. Do you think it's Liam Lawson that's the problem, or the car itself that's mostly built around Max?
That was my question.
That is a fantastic question, and I think it's a totally valid question, because it's not just Liam. It's not just Checo. It's not just Pierre Gasly. It's not just Albon. Like, the list is incredible of people who can't drive that car, and the list of people who can drive that car
is one guy. And, if you listen to the preference and how Max likes to drive, it seems very different. The setup that he likes and the kind of dynamics that he likes, it's very, very different than how most other drivers like to pilot their cars. I think I don't know if you guys heard this interview with Albon. It's been making the rounds the last couple of years, where he talks about Max's driving style and how the car is set up and whether the car is set up for him or not. And he likened it to, if you're playing video games and you turn the sensitivity all the way up to like 100, right? And you're playing with that amount of, like, you have that kind of like sensitivity and twitchiness, and that's how Max likes to have that car set up. So, Thomas, I'll pose the question to you, right? Is anyone going to be able to come in and drive that car successfully, or is it so developed around him? We talk about Yuki having a great season. We're all cheering for Yuki. Everyone likes Yuki. I would hate to see him come in Japan in Suzuka, home race, and just absolutely get killed driving a car that is not drivable. Can you imagine? He gets his one shot, he's in Suzuka, and he's qualifying last.
So, to that, kind of going back to that, Liam Lawson, I like him as a driver. I don't think he has enough confidence in that car. And to say that he's the sole problem why he's not performing, I call that BS. It's clearly, the team has some problems. The car has some problems, as in it's not geared towards him. Do I think Red Bull is going to rip off the Band-Aid very, very soon to him? I hope not, but I think they are. I think, to Drew's point, they can't afford that shit anymore. And I think they're going to, rip it off and put either Yuki or someone else in there and see what they can do. Now, going to, Yuki, should Yuki even take the seat at Red Bull? Because a lot of people that took that seat, that second seat, it did not work out well for them, whether that's Albon, whether that's Pierre Gasly, whether that's Checo, right now Liam Lawson. So maybe Yuki's looking at it, he's like, shit, if I go to this car, that's it. My career might be over. I might have 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 races. If I'm lucky, I might, get to finish the season. But if I'm not going to be performing in that car, that's it. I'm out. So is it in Yuki's best interest to even take the seat at Red Bull? No. If I would be Yuki, I would stay the hell away from that car and from that team and just be like, nope, I'm happy with where I am. You guys can put whatever else in there. I wanted to race for you for a couple years now, but you always kept on passing me with all these other drivers. Now I don't want to race for you. Simple as that, essentially. So yeah, he should stay away from them and not take the seat even. Again, I'm not Yuki. I don't know what he's going to choose, but I hope that's what he chooses, because that would be in his best interest.
I think that's a hard seat to turn down.
That's what I was going to say. I was just like, I think these guys are so delusional, dude, that they would be
everyone thinks
in that seat. Exactly.
I got this.
Exactly.
Everyone can do this. I got this. I'm the solution.
Yes.
Right. I think
they have to. They have to think like that.
Yeah. That's what Liam thought. He thought, he was giving Perez the finger on the way by, passing him. He was like, oh, yeah, I got this. This shit's easy. Right. And he gets there. So I guess the follow-up question, the second question to that is, we talk about, Checo as a problem. We talk about Lawson as the problem. Gasly was the problem. Everyone's been the problem. Right. What kind of responsibility does Red Bull Racing have to take for building a car? And they're going to say it's not built around Max. That's the line that they're going to say. But how much responsibility do they have to take for developing a car so singularly around one driver's preference that no one can successfully pilot the second seat?
That's 100% where I was going to take this, right? Like, you have to be able to self-reflect and just look at the entire second seat graveyard that you've taken of all of these fantastic drivers that are all great drivers. Like, to get that second seat, you couldn't have been good. You had to have been great at some point. And they have to just say, like, listen, when we were winning every single race, when we were the dominant car, we could have a one-trick pony. But now that you're not the fastest car on the grid anymore, you really need to think you can't do that anymore. You can't just have Max carry the whole ship. You need 2 cars in that race. And, for them to start thinking about making this a well-rounded car and not a Max Verstappen rocket ship, I think needs to be thought about, especially if Max plans on leaving. Like, that has to be coming into the debate now, is like, okay, if Max takes off, now we have a car that Max can only drive, and we don't have Max anymore. And so now you have this super touchy, twitchy car that nobody can drive. That's not a good look, right? And is it coming to the end of the, this rule regulation set into 2026 would be completely different cars. Everything's going to be a new design, new chassis, new model, new everything. Is it good timing? Probably, because this is the last set that they're going to have with this. And are they designing the next car around Max? Probably. Let's get real, right?
They have a solution. Bring back Daniel Ricciardo for a couple test runs into the Red Bull, see how he does. No,
Danny is.
Who's the reserve driver over at Red Bull?
Sorry?
Who's the reserve driver over at Red Bull?
Good question.
I don't even know.
This is what I'm getting at. Who's slipping into that seat? If Lawson, let's say Lawson broke his hand in a crash, because that's very likely. Who's the reserve driver for Red Bull? Right? Is that worth
Yuki?
Like, Yuki's the reserve driver?
I don't know. No, I don't know that for sure. I was just making shit up. But like that would be kind of like the logical choice. And I think, he's been fighting for like a top tier team seat for so long, specifically Red Bull. I think he would just have to take it. But I do feel for Liam a little bit and the position that he's in right now with that car, because, I just don't know if he's being put in a position to succeed by the rest of the team. And then similar with, someone like Jack Doohan, right? This guy has been waiting around for his chance for a long time. And now we're 2 races in and he seems like he's on a short leash as well.
You were right. Yuki is the reserve driver for.
Oh, is he?
He is. Yeah. That's a real thing.
All right, there you go.
But before we get into that other thing, I want to say those Racing Bulls are looking good. Like,
they're looking spicy,
mid-pack competitive. Like, that's fantastic. Like, the fact that Yuki's into Q3, it's crazy. What are we talking about? Like, he's like starting 6th on the grid. Good for that guy. To your point, Thomas. Like, man, like, does he want that seat? Because that could be career suicide. Like you said, dude, you were bang on that. Like, that is a great point, is like, do you take it? Now, my question is, do you have choices and options? When Red Bull is your father company to the sister team to the reserve driver, like, if Red Bull calls, you fucking answer, bro. Yeah, I don't think Yuki's got a choice. No, like, I think if they kick Lawson out,
Yuki can, huff and puff, but at the end of the day, he will have to take it and drive it. And then, if that does happen again, I hope he can control that car better than the previous drivers, because if it's the same shit, then it's not the drivers at this point. At that point, that's where the blame with the drivers ends, because it's none of them. It's the car that's messed up. And that's why I kind of, brought in Daniel Ricciardo, because he was, I guess, the last successful driver with Max Verstappen that actually competed,
But the car was so different back then, dude.
It was.
Like, so different. I agree with you. He was the last super... But honestly, Checo was pretty
tried last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Daniel tried to get a seat last year, and it didn't work out for him, right? They gave him a chance, and he couldn't... He couldn't pilot that car the way that it needed to be done. So
one other thing I kind of want to mention, just to what Drew said, how Liam Lawson, essentially there's talk on him being on the chopping block, how Jack Doohan is essentially talk of him not performing. I don't know what's going through these teams' heads or principles, but to second race, and that's what you're talking about. That's in my opinion, that's too early to even talk. Give them at least 3 solid races, and let's not even count the first one just because of the weather. Give them 3 solid races to see if they can improve, because I think right now is just way too early for them to essentially say, 2 races, you're not performing, you're out. To another flip side of the coin, I get it. They want results, they want the points, they want to compete for that championship. So, but 2 races, it's a little bit, in my eyes, is a bit too early.
Williams gave Logan Sargent like an entire season.
Right?
Like, and some, you know what I mean? So, like, if you're going to give chances, like, give the guy a full season chance, then you might as well. You've already made
it. Was a different time. It was a different time.
It was a different time, which is crazy because it wasn't that long ago.
No. Okay. So here's the question then. Is Liam in the Red Bull seat for Suzuka? Yes or no? Yeah. As of today, Tuesday, March 25th, does he get that seat?
Yeah, he got
Yes?
Yeah.
Thomas, is he in the seat?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think if that was any other track, it would be a hard yes. But the fact that it's Japan and Yuki's the other option, I could see that. A little swap-a-do. Put Lawson
but you're saying Liam's going to be in the Red Bull seat for Suzuka. He has the ride.
I think he's got the ride, yeah. But, like, if it wasn't Yuki Tsunoda as the option to take it, it would be a hard yes. But the fact that Yuki in Japan, like, if they're going to make it for any move, this is when they're going to do it. Do they swap the drivers for this one race and just see what happens? Lawson go to Racing Bulls, Yuki go to Red Bull. They throw it down in Suzuka, and if it works, then they stick to it. If it doesn't work, they swap them back. And Yuki got to race in a Red Bull at Suzuka. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. You know what? I'm just going to play devil's advocate. I think Liam's going to be out of the seat for Japan. I think he is just crushed I think he's a broken man right now, and he needs to go rebuild himself somewhere. Maybe that's going to be in the Racing Bulls because they've been competitive. And how ironic, how funny would it be is if he like just absolutely thrives in that Racing Bull Visa car, whatever the fuck we're calling this team right now, and Yuki struggles. That would be a fun test because then you know,
Yes,
it's the car.
Then I was just going to say, because like then the Racing Bulls car would, prove that it's an easier drivability than the Red Bull.
Okay, what about Doohan? You want to touch on him quickly? Is he going to be in an Alpine in Suzuka?
Yeah, well, yeah. He's struggling, but I think he's not struggling as much compared to his like partner. Like Gasly wasn't great either. Like we saw that Alpine by the end of the race really struggling, and like everybody was passing him by the end of the race. Like it was hard on the tires. It wasn't great over race distance. Do I think Doohan's got a lot to do to prove that he deserves that seat? I think so. I think Colapinto's nipping at his heels 100%. But I truly think that Doohan's going to be there for the next handful of races.
I agree. No,
all right.
In all fairness, yes, this next race he's going to be in. But if he doesn't perform, I could see a swap happening, or he's getting the boot. Yeah.
All right. Well, we have lots to look forward to. We're going to do a full preview of Suzuka next week. It's going to be lots of fun, very entertaining. Touching on entertainment for a second, do we want to talk about F1 media and their choice to broadcast certain messages over others?
Please enlighten me. I don't know if I know what you
do. You know this?
About. Maybe not.
All right.
I don't know. Enlighten me though.
Maybe you do. Okay, so there was a whole thing about the Ferraris, right? And they were going to swap positions.
Yes.
You were aware of this part, right?
Yes. I'm here.
If you were watching, yeah, okay. I wasn't sure if they showed that on Sky Sports or not. So on the broadcast, there was they played some messages of Lewis presumably being a little bit difficult or not trying to be as agreeable with facilitating the change, saying, I'm not going to change. I'll tell you when we're going to change. And then Charles being like, are we going to change? When are we going to change? No one's changing, right? And then finally they swap positions and Charles took off. And the light that it portrayed was that Lewis wasn't being a team player, that he was making things difficult. He just wasn't being agreeable with the move. Mm-hmm. Right? Wasn't a great look. He was kind of arguing with his race engineer again. It comes out afterwards because someone's talking to Fred Vasseur. They're doing an interview, and Fred says, listen, Lewis is the guy that actually asked for the position change. He knew he wasn't as fast. He said, I'm going to let Charles go. And then it was just a matter of when, because Charles wasn't in position or whatever those mitigating circumstances were. But it's a much different look when you hear the actual timeline of radio messages. And now F1 media is coming under a little bit of scrutiny because they obviously only played the ones that are going to make for juicy stories afterwards.
Sure.
We've talked about this before, right? F1, there's the FIA, there's the governing body, there's Liberty Media, and then there's F1 Media, which is in charge of the broadcast. And they choose which radio messages to play. They choose the angles. They choose everything that we get to consume. So they get to really dictate the narrative of a race. So what do we think? Do we have any thoughts? Is this surprising? How much, do we think is being fabricated for our entertainment on a daily race basis?
Listen, I know that what we hear as far as radio messages are concerned are a small fraction. From my understanding, the average amount of communication between driver and race engineer is over 500 messages per Grand Prix, not weekend, per Grand Prix, which is a lot of chit chat in a couple hours, right? So those guys are going back and forth. Do we hear everything? No. Are things out of context? Yes. Are we displayed messages after the things have already happened? 100%. Because like sometimes you see the radio message pop up or it comes in and you're just like, that already happened. Like, what are they discussing? Like, we've already gone past this. Like, so I understand that there's a delay. It's live broadcast. They're doing their best. I understand that. Does that come with controlling narratives? 100%. It's Drive to Survive live, right? Like, they're just trying to make things spicy to make it more entertaining. Is it their job to entertain us? Yup. Because without Crofty and Brundle, is it less entertaining to watch a race? 100%. It's like going to a hockey game and you're like, fuck, I really appreciate that announcer when I'm watching it at home. You know what I mean? When you're live there and there's nobody telling you who passes to who, getting all excited when someone shoots and scores. When you're live at a hockey game, it's like, what the fuck is going on? You know what I mean? Like, you really miss it. And so, I'm here for the announcers. I'm here for the storyline. I'm here for the excitement. And to Thomas's point earlier, like, it needs to be an entertaining hour and a half, 2 hours. Like, fucking entertain me. That's my, that's what I want to see. Good racing, and I want to be entertained. Do I think that I'm smart enough in Formula One knowledge to know that Lewis wasn't putting up a fight to like switch positions? 100%. I didn't buy into any of that shit. Did I find out later that Lewis was the one who initiated that? 100%. I'm pretty sure on the Sky Sports broadcast, they said it before the end of the race. Like, it was like during the race after that message came out, and Brundle was like, wait a second, Lewis was the one who asked for this. So like, we knew right away that it was a farce. Like, it was, out of context. But I'm okay with that. I'm here to be sold. Sell me the dream.
See, I'm okay with that to the point, but when you start painting a picture, like, not everyone's an F1 fan like we are. Some people just might be watching it on a random Sunday. Some people might not follow the sport. And when someone hears a message like that, like basically what, Lewis said, or what they broadcasted what Lewis said, it gives them an impression of that incident, of that day, whatever it was. It's like, oh, this guy is difficult to work with, or he's a little bit of a douche that he's asking that way. I get the whole fabrication, a little bit entertainment. I get that, but I have a problem is when you start kind of nitpicking what to put out there and what not to put out, and you don't get a full story right away. You only get it, a day later or after the race or whatever it is, and it gives you that kind of like what Drive to Survive did this season, kind of like a little bit of a fake news, fake story. Let's stir up some drama, and me personally, I don't like it.
So I do have a problem with this, and my problem with this is that is a manipulation of the sporting event. I was sitting here while you guys were talking. I was trying to think about other sports where we're being fed a particular narrative or something that's going on. Because you look at football, hockey, baseball, basketball, it doesn't matter, right? You have the play on the court. And, for the most part, what you see is what you get. Sometimes you get like different athletes that are being mic'd up, right? And, you get some insight into the game, but it's never, I feel like it's never really used in the same way that Formula One media uses their powers, right? And we talked about this in the past about manufacturing entertainment, right? And the balance between entertainment and sport, and how sometimes Liberty Media and Formula One media, they kind of err more towards media than sport. And, the other example is, it's their sole discretion what to broadcast, right? And they broadcast drivers, dropping F-bombs, swearing, and then you have the FIA president saying, well, this isn't right because this is a family show and they shouldn't be swearing, and we're going to fine you, or we're going to make you do community service, whatever Max had to do, right? So I think there are contradictions in how they are operating the sport, and when you so clearly are trying to manufacture storylines, it feels more like reality TV to me than sport. And that's where I have an issue with it. So if you're going to if you want to give fans an insight, because we love the radio messages, we love hearing what's going on. Everyone goes quiet when, that little sound comes up, right? Give us the full picture, right? Don't try and pull the wool over our eyes and manufacture stories that maybe aren't fully true, right? If you're going to do it, just do it and be honest about it. So that's my 2 cents. And anyways, I'm done. What's next? What's next, boys? All right. So we got Japan coming up. We got a couple of weeks. Going to do a little recap. I think we should. We're going to talk about the rookies, but I think we should say that for next week because there's lots to talk about with the rookies. Lots going on.
We could do a rookie
really
report
impressive
card.
Drives. A little rookie report card, 2 races in. I love it. So let's save that for next week. Anything else before we sign off for today?
That's it, boys. I'm pumped for Suzuka. We got one more meeting. You know, we're gonna have another podcast before we get into some more racing, which I'm here for. If you haven't already, let's use this quick moment to plug the Discord, the Instagram, the TikTok, all the places where you can find social media. If you're watching this on YouTube, we appreciate you. Like, comment, subscribe, do that whole kit. Really helps us out with the podcast. If you were listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to this, we appreciate it. Same thing, 5-star review, whatever you can do. We appreciate it more than you know. Reach out to us, man. We have a lot of fun. Yeah. Jump in the Discord.
We read every comment.
We do read every comment. We read every comment. So
every single comment. So please talk to us.
Hell yeah.
All right, boys. For Thomas and Drew, I'm Walker. This has been Formula One True North, the Canadian Formula One podcast. Talk to you next time.
Ciao.
Peace.